Hollywood, 1956. Bing Crosby's verdict was final. You'll never be a star, Andy. You don't have what it takes. Andy Williams, 28 years old and desperate for validation from his idol, felt something break inside him. Bing was the biggest name in music. His opinion was gospel, and he just told Andy to give up. Andy walked out of that Paramount office in complete silence, his dreams shattered. 21 years later, October 1977, Bing Crosby collapsed on a golf course in Spain. As he lay dying in the hospital, Andy Williams flew across the world. What Andy did in that room left Bing weeping in his final hours. By 1956, Bing Crosby had been America's voice for nearly 3 decades. He'd defined what it meant to be a crooner. His records had sold hundreds of millions of copies. His movies had made him a household name. When Bing Crosby spoke about music, the entire industry listened. Andy Williams, at 28, was nobody. He'd spent years singing background vocals. The Williams Brothers Quartet had some success, but when they disbanded, Andy found himself starting over, alone, trying to make it as a solo artist in an industry that didn't seem to want him. Record labels kept saying no. Producers weren't interested. Club owners booked other singers. Andy was talented, everyone agreed on that, but talent wasn't enough. The industry was crowded with talented singers who never became stars. What Andy needed was an endorsement, a mentor, someone with power who could open doors. He needed Bing Crosby. Through a connection at Paramount Studios, Andy managed to get 15 minutes on Bing's calendar. Just 15 minutes, but that was all he needed. One song, one chance to prove he belonged. Andy prepared for that meeting like it was the most important audition of his life, because it was. He chose the Hawaiian wedding song, a beautiful melody that showcased his range and his warm, intimate vocal style. He practiced for weeks. Every phrase, every breath, every moment had to be perfect. The morning of the meeting, Andy barely slept. He arrived at Paramount Studios an hour early, sat in his car, tried to calm his nerves. This was it. This was his shot. Bing Crosby's office at Paramount was exactly what Andy expected. Elegant, filled with gold records and photographs of Bing with presidents, movie stars, and entertainment legends. The walls told the story of a man who'd conquered every aspect of show business. Bing himself was casual, friendly even. He offered Andy a drink, made small talk about the Williams brothers, asked about Andy's family. For a moment, Andy felt hopeful. Bing was treating him like a peer, like someone whose career mattered. "So," Bing said, settling into his leather chair behind the massive desk, "let's hear what you've got." Andy stood. His accompanist, a studio pianist Bing had provided, began the introduction to the Hawaiian wedding song. Andy sang. He poured everything he had into that performance, every technique he'd learned, every emotion he could access. This wasn't just a song. This was his entire future compressed into 3 minutes. When he finished, the room was silent. Bing sat back in his chair, his expression unreadable. The pianist looked uncomfortable. "Andy," Bing said finally, his voice calm and measured, "can I be honest with you?" "Of course," Andy said, though something in Bing's tone made his stomach drop. "You're a nice kid. You've got a pleasant voice, but you don't have what it takes to be a star." The words hung in the air like smoke. "The market is oversaturated with crooners, and the ones who make it, they have something special, something unique, a quality that makes people need to hear them." Bing leaned forward, and his next words were delivered with the certainty of a man who'd been right about everything for 30 years. "You don't have that quality, Andy. You'll never be a star. My advice? Find something else to do. Maybe vocal coaching, arrangements, but performing? That's not your path." Andy stood there, unable to move, unable to speak. 28 years old, years of work, years of hope, and the king of crooners had just told him it was over. "I appreciate your time, Mr. Crosby," Andy finally managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. He walked out of that office, through the Paramount lot, to his car, and he sat there for an hour, staring at nothing. Everything inside him felt broken. For weeks after that meeting, Andy Williams couldn't sing. Not because he'd lost his voice physically, but because every time he opened his mouth, he heard Bing's words, "You'll never be a star." His friends tried to encourage him. His family told him Bing was wrong, but Andy couldn't shake it. Bing Crosby was the standard. If Bing said you didn't have it, you didn't have it. Andy thought about quitting, about taking Bing's advice and finding something else to do with his life. But then something shifted. One night, alone in his small Los Angeles apartment, Andy made a decision. If Bing Crosby thought he'd never be a star, then Andy would prove him wrong. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but because Andy knew something Bing didn't. Andy knew how hard he was willing to work. The next 6 years were brutal. Andy took every gig he could get. Nightclubs, television appearances, recording sessions. He worked with Steve Allen. He sang backup. He did commercials. He said yes to everything. Slowly, methodically, Andy built a reputation, not as a star, but as a reliable, professional vocalist who showed up prepared and delivered quality work every single time. In 1961, Andy signed with Columbia Records. His first solo album didn't set the world on fire, neither did his second, but they sold, modestly, enough to keep going. Then, in 1962, everything changed. NBC offered Andy Williams his own variety show. The Andy Williams Show premiered in September 1962, and it was an immediate hit. Andy's warm personality, his impeccable taste in music, and his ability to make every guest feel special created something television audiences had been craving. Within a year, The Andy Williams Show was one of the highest-rated programs on television. Andy's Christmas specials became annual events. His recording of Moon River became the definitive version. His albums started going gold. By 1965, Andy Williams wasn't just a star, he was a phenomenon. And Bing Crosby noticed. October 14, 1977. Andy Williams was at his home in Los Angeles when the phone rang. It was Catherine Crosby, Ding's wife. "Andy, I don't know if you've heard, but Bing collapsed this morning. He was playing golf near Madrid. They've taken him to the hospital." Andy's heart sank. "How is he?" "Not good," Catherine said, her voice breaking. "The doctors don't think he has much time. Andy, he's been asking for you. He wants to see you." Andy didn't hesitate. "I'll be on the next flight." 18 hours later, Andy Williams walked into the Red Cross Hospital in Madrid. He was exhausted from the journey, but that didn't matter. Bing Crosby was dying, and he'd asked for Andy. Catherine met him in the hallway outside Bing's room. She hugged him, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for coming," she whispered. "He needs to tell you something. I think it's been weighing on him for years." Andy walked into the room. Bing lay in the hospital bed, pale and weak, but his eyes were clear. When he saw Andy, something like relief crossed his face. "Andy," Bing said, his voice barely audible, "you came." "Of course I came," Andy said, pulling a chair close to the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm dying," Bing said with a faint smile. Then the smile faded. "Andy, I need to tell you something. I need to apologize to you." "Bing, you don't—" "Please," Bing interrupted, his voice urgent. "Let me say this. In 1956, you came to my office. You sang for me, and I told you you'd never be a star." Andy nodded. "I remember." "I was wrong," Bing said, and his eyes filled with tears. "God, Andy, I was so wrong. You became everything I said you'd never be. And more than that, you became something truly special." "What do you mean?" Andy asked gently. "You became the kind of artist this industry needed," Bing said, tears now flowing freely. "You built your career without destroying anyone else. You lifted people up. You made everyone around you better. Watching you over these years, seeing the grace you've shown, the way you've encouraged young singers, the kindness you've brought to this business, Andy, you showed us all what it really means to be a star." Bing reached out a trembling hand, and Andy took it. "I've thought about that day in my office so many times over the years," Bing continued, his voice breaking. "I wanted to call you, to tell you how wrong I was, how proud I was at what you'd built. But pride kept getting in the way. Foolish pride. And now, lying here, I realize I wasted so much time. I should have told you years ago." Bing sobbed quietly, his shoulders shaking. "I'm so sorry, Andy. I'm so sorry for what I said to you, for trying to take away your dream when you were just starting out." Andy felt his own eyes fill with tears. "Bing, I forgave you for that years ago, honestly. What you said to me in 1956 hurt, but it also drove me to work harder than I ever thought possible. In a strange way, you gave me a gift." "How can you say that?" Bing asked. "Because you taught me what kind of person I wanted to be," Andy said. "When young singers came to me for advice, I remembered how your words made me feel, and I made sure I never made anyone feel that way. You taught me that success isn't just about talent, it's about how you treat people along the way." Bing wept harder, his hand gripping Andy's. "You're a better man than I ever was," Bing whispered. "No," Andy said firmly. "You're a man who changed American music forever. You opened doors for an entire generation of singers. You set a standard of excellence that inspired millions. I learned from you, Bing. The good and the difficult, all of it made me who I am, and I'm grateful for all of it." Andy stayed with Bing for another hour. They talked about music, about life, about the singers they'd loved, and the songs that had defined their careers, about family, about what it all meant in the end. When it was time to leave, Andy leaned down and hugged Bing gently. "Thank you for calling me, and thank you for everything you gave to music. You'll always be the king, Bing." "No," Bing said quietly, his voice barely a whisper now. "You're the king now, Andy, and you wear the crown with more grace than any of us ever did." Bing Crosby died that evening, just a few hours after Andy left. He was 77 years old. At Bing's funeral a week later, Andy Williams was one of the speakers. He stood at the podium in front of Hollywood's biggest stars and told a story that surprised many of them. He told them about the meeting in 1956, about Bing's brutal assessment, about the years of doubt that followed. "But here's what I want you to know about Bing Crosby," Andy said, his voice steady and clear. "In his final hours, he showed me something more important than all his success, all his records, all his fame. He showed me humility. He showed me the courage it takes to admit when you're wrong. And he showed me that it's never too late to seek forgiveness." Andy paused, looking out at the congregation. "Bing Crosby made me a better singer by challenging me to prove him wrong, but he made me a better man by showing me, in the end, that we're all human. We all make mistakes, and the true measure of a person is whether they can face those mistakes with honesty and grace. Bing did that, and I'll be forever grateful." After the funeral, dozens of people approached Andy. Many of them had similar stories. Bing had been hard on them, dismissed them, told them they weren't good enough. But Andy's grace in handling the story changed how they remembered those moments. Instead of bitterness, they found compassion. Instead of resentment, they found understanding. Years later, Andy would say that his conversation with Bing in that Madrid hospital was one of the most important moments of his life. "Bing taught me 2 lessons," Andy said in an interview in the 1990s. "First, in 1956, he taught me that other people's opinions don't define you. Only your work and your character define you. And in 1977, he taught me that seeking forgiveness takes more courage than anything else we do. Both lessons made me who I am. The story of Andy Williams and Bing Crosby shows us that rejection doesn't define us. Our response to it does. Andy could have let Bing's words destroy him in 1956. Instead, he let them drive him. He worked harder, stayed humble, and built a career on both talent and kindness. And when Bing asked for forgiveness 21 years later, Andy gave it freely. No conditions, no bitterness, just grace. That's real strength. Not the power to dominate others, but the wisdom to forgive them. Not the ability to hold a grudge, but the courage to let it go. Andy Williams proved that you can be both successful and kind, that you can reach the top without stepping on others, and that forgiveness, offered freely, heals both people. 21 years between that rejection and that hospital room, but for Andy, forgiveness had come long before. That's the kind of man he was. If this story moved you, subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Have you ever been told you weren't good enough? How did you respond? Let us know in the comments, and ring that notification bell for more true stories about grace and redemption.